Hey, good morning, guys. Welcome to the Sunday gathering. Happy Mother's Day to all our mothers, and thank you for joining today. If you're a mother, I know you probably got lots of other things you could do, and so if you are a mother and you're on the stream today, I really appreciate it, and we all admire and respect you for what you do, for sure. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Linda, Ed, it's good to see you. Rick, Christine, Adam. Who else we got up here? Patriot, we got you, and Stacy, and Red Raven. You're going to be traveling. Hopefully you can listen to a little bit. And Mr. Frag, at the very beginning, I got your comment. You may not be live with us because you're in Australia, but I got your topic and I will do it this morning. And so we'll get to that. Good morning, Stacia. Happy Mother's Day. All right. Hope you guys are doing good and had a good week. My week has been a week. Good news is I have my daughter home from college, so we had some fun this weekend. She helped me yesterday plant flowers in the front yard, and so that was kind of fun. It was nice to spend some time with her. And we've got some pretty good weather today where I am. Hopefully that holds out. Good morning, Kelsey and Mike. Good morning. Kelsey, you ask, can we talk about what does it mean, the evangelical viewpoint of prophecy that Trump seems to be turning his back on Israel? I know, trying to know how to converse with these friends and family. Sure, Kelsey. Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about it. We could probably do that at the beginning here pretty quick. I'll just do a short little discussion of that and then we'll move forward. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and do my announcements and get that out of the way, and then we can do our prayer and we'll get started this morning. We are going to be reading in Mark chapter 14 this morning. We did Mark 13 last week, the Olivet Discourse. And so it'll be good to see what's further on, what continues after that. We're getting close to Jesus' crucifixion, so we may be talking a little bit about that. Good morning, Deborah. It's good to see you. But yeah, I am Bible Scribe. I've been on YouTube for about 5.5 years or so, doing videos, doing researched video work. I initially looked at it as a way that I could continue teaching. I've been a Bible teacher in churches for a long time, just over my life. So found it as a new outlet, a new way to do that. And I've grown and expanded a bit over the years. We are doing this live stream that we're doing now. We do it every Sunday morning at 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central. And I know that's not always convenient for everybody who watches. We've got people watching all over the world, which is exciting, and I love it, and I love those people. So thank you if you're joining us from another country. And as I said, we've got some from Australia that, it'd be problematic for them to join. But I have had a couple of Australians join on the live stream before, which was kind of funny. A very early morning for them. But anyway, so yeah, I've been doing this for a while, and you can definitely find me online. You'll notice at the top left of your screen is my website. So if we go to my website, you'll see that it is right here, and it shows you I'm on many platforms where I do try to put some content out. YouTube is, of course, my main platform. And Facebook is one where I do have a page and a prayer group that you could join if you would like to pray with us. And then the other platforms, I have stuff going on as well. Telegram, I actually post a little bit of news here and there, just little things that seem to impact the Christian world. And so sometimes I do post on Telegram. That's a lot of fun. We have some discussions there. But that's kind of where you'll find me. Now you'll notice at the top there's this Bible app, and as you can see, I've got a bunch of tabs in my browser open, and they are to that Bible app that I have written. I've built this tool, and I use it all the time in my research. I was using it this week to research the Holy Spirit, for which I'm preparing a video. By the way, that research is going really well. Really excited about that video. Not because necessarily there's anything way outlandish that I've found, just so much clarity when you really holistically look at the Holy Spirit throughout the scriptures. And to be frank with you, like, I've gone just about through the whole Bible on the Holy Spirit, and I haven't even touched other writings yet. So I'm excited to see, now that I've almost gone through the Bible and I've gotten a lot of great information, I'm excited to see what's in these other writings. So I believe that actually is coming soon, the video on the Holy Spirit. I think that I may have it done this week or next. I may, depending on, how things go and how I feel, if I've got enough energy to do it. But that is coming soon. That's the next one I will publish. Unless there's some other little thing that comes up that sometimes I do little videos on. But this Bible app is available to you. You can go and sign up for it as a guest, and you can use it, and you'll have access at that point to a few books. You notice there's about 40 or so books on here. But guest access gives you free access to about 4 books. And if you want full access, then it costs $10 a month. And that helps support me building this tool, hosting this tool, and then also updating in the future, but also helps me just generally with all of my work when people support me like that. So if you want to become a member, there's instructions on the site when you sign up as to how to do that. But I have a link to that campaign at Give Send Go, where you can give the $10, any amount really. You just, for every $10 you give, you will get a month subscription to that tool. So you can click the support the work banner here, and you can do that just as easily there. As soon as I receive a payment, I contact you and we get you set up right away. So it's no problem at all. But you'll notice the website has tons of stuff. It's got all the stuff really that I've done before. I've put up towards the top here some of my favorite videos of the ones that I've worked on. And then you can just scroll down and see there's just tons and tons of junk if you want to go through it. It's not junk, it's good stuff. There's just a lot now. I've been doing it for quite a while. And it's a pleasure, it really is. It's fun to look back and see all of that, see where I've come from. Okay, so with that, I think that's about it. I kind of sort of discussed there what I was working on too, mostly the Holy Spirit video. That's really been the bulk of what I've gotten done this week, so I guess that's what I'll leave it at. Good morning, Monique and Raina, and the real McCoy, good morning. Squiffy Bear, good morning to you. And looking up for him, Pilgrim, good to see you. All right, well, with that, let's don't forget to put topics in the chat. Let me make sure I've got Kelsey's. Let me make sure I didn't miss any here. If you do have any other topics, I've got 4 topics on my list right now, other than reading through Mark 14 together. So if you do have 1 or 2 more questions, we probably could do 1 or 2 more, and we can get those in today, I think. But if not, I can always come up with things, always. Hello there, Emma. Good morning to you, or good afternoon. Good to see you. All right, well, let's go ahead then and... Oh, Stacia, did you ask a question? Did I miss it? Oh, yeah, you did. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay. You asked about the Israelites believe the temple is heaven and earth. So wouldn't us being the new temple be considered a new heaven and new earth? Yeah, we can talk about that. Okay, XP Black Sheep, I see your question. You say, when, in my opinion, is the little season going to end? I'm sick of it. Is that really something you want to talk about, or are you just making fun of me? Are you having fun? That's funny. Good morning, MC Studios. Good morning. I put it on the list, XP. If you want me to talk about it, I can briefly talk about it at the end. Linda, you say set your chat filter to all. Yes, for you guys out there, definitely set your chat filter to all. Maybe it's me. Maybe I need to. Oh my goodness. if that might be on me then, Linda. Maybe you just fixed me, because my chat had that too. It has this little toggle, and I didn't see it on the live stream chat for me. I thought that mine was always like everything, but it was set to top chat. What a joke. What a joke their tools are sometimes. I'm just telling you, man. It makes me so mad. Yeah, Patriot, I got yours on Luke 21:19, Contradiction. I got that. Adam Unchained, you asked about your timeline, but then you're asking also about the land of Jesus on old maps. I don't know about that. I don't know about the land of Jesus on old maps. But since you've already got one, Adam, I may not do that one this time, but I've taken it down as a note. All right. Looking up for him, you have a prayer request there. I'm going to pull that and make sure I get it on my list. Thank you for that prayer request. Yeah, so let's move towards the prayer section. Let's do our quick prayer. So if you do have prayer requests, you want to mention them in the chat, please do that right now, and I'll pick them up, and then I will put them, of course, in our prayer groups so that we can pray through the week for those things. All right. Emma Coombs, you want us to pray more for your mother. Good. We will. We will. We will. All right. And Patriot, your friend Beverly has a question. I'll put that down, Patriot. I don't know that I fully understand the question. Is Beverly asking about the time frames of the seasons, or just making the point that there are long seasons in the Bible and little seasons? Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead then. Let's go ahead and do our prayer and get started with that. And then we can go ahead and start on Mark chapter 14 and then our topics. So I will bow my head real quick and say a prayer for us to get started. And then we will get started. Thank you guys for joining this morning. Lord God in heaven, I do thank you so much for this day. Thank you for Mother's Day, a day to think of our mothers, remember their huge contributions to our lives, and the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into being a good mother. And we just thank you for those who have risen to that challenge, Lord. Thank you for my mother that you gave me, and just everything that means, Lord. Thank you for all the ladies on today that are mothers, and just thank you for everyone here today. Give us a sense of clarity and a clearness of mind so that we can go through the material we've got before us and talk about these things in a way that suits you and helps edify each other. Give me clarity so that I can find things, the ability to use the tool sets I've got here, Lord, and just help people with this information. And just give us all a great day. We can offer it back to you, Lord. And thank you so much for all that you've given to us. It's in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, that we pray to you. Amen. All right. Okay, let's go ahead then. We will get started on Mark 14. So let me pull it up on the screen for us and let's go through it. So I think we don't probably have to go back and talk about where we are. This is still, Jesus and the disciples are still in Jerusalem. And for the Olivet Discourse, they'd walked across the Kidron Valley over to the Mount of Olives and just sat there, and looking back across the valley at Jerusalem, Jesus starts telling them about what's going to happen to the buildings that they're looking at across the valley. The disciples ask, when are these these things going to happen? Jesus says the buildings are going to be torn down. They say, when are these things going to happen? So Jesus tells them a lot about what's going to happen. And we read all about that last week. So, and he does say, I want to make sure that I say this because this has been a confusion point, and I don't know if I always describe this perfectly. I don't know if I always say this right. In fact, I've really, in the past week or so, I don't know if it's just my emotional state and frame of mind. I have a lot going on at work that's really just tearing me down a little bit. But I feel like sometimes I'm not explaining things very well. I think I do a good job in most things, but there's some things that are just difficult. And so I wanted to say here that, even though I take a position that 70 AD, as it was definitely a judgment, it was definitely a fulfillment of many prophecies in the Old Testament, and it was definitely a fulfillment of Christ's words, I don't see it as Christ's final coming. But I do see it as a little c coming, if you will, quote unquote. Okay, I do see it as that. And of course in Mark, and in Mark 13, and in Luke 21, and in Matthew 24, all of them say the thing that's said in Mark 13 verse 26, which is on your screen, and they say that they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Okay, and I have no problem with that. And I don't have any problem with that being said about 70 AD. And that's what I think in some cases Christ was saying. There's other passages, like when Christ was in front of the high priest Caiaphas, he said, you will see the Son of Man in glory with his angels. And I think it says on a cloud or in a cloud. That's not a problem with 70 AD. I think that that's exactly the things that are talked about in the Old Testament sometimes when it says, I'm going to come against Egypt in the clouds and blah, blah, blah. There's all of that. And I don't think it's hyperbolic language, but I also think that it is a real reference to Christ coming in the clouds in 70 AD for one instance. And then there were other instances of that as well. And I also believe that you have to understand this with a time-based context. So you have to understand that I believe the way God looked at it in prophecy was that Christ would be in the kingdom judging the nations for a long period of time. And so I believe that some of that perhaps began in 70 AD. That was after Christ had died, resurrected, and then went to be glorified beside his Father in heaven, as the texts all say. The scriptures say. So I just wanted to explain that it's not easy to explain. And sometimes I don't think I do a very good job of it. But I just think that it's problematic when people come to the words of the scriptures and they assign things to them, like you take the word coming in the Greek, which means to come or to go or to arrive or to be someplace, okay? And you take that word in English and you make a capital C and you say it's the coming of Christ in 70 AD. Well, no, there's more things than that. And there's a larger context than that. And it's a time-based context, a historical context. Remember how big God is. Remember how big God is. And I would refer you back to my video on the day of the Lord, which shows that the day of the Lord was really a large period of history. It was a 1,000-year period. The prophetic day age in which Christ would be waging war on the nations. That's what is talked about in the Old Testament. You can't wage war on 10 different nations in one day. That's not what the prophecies were talking about. And so I just wanted to say that I totally recognize what Christ is talking about in the Olivet Discourse. And I don't see conflict with that and my viewpoints. I just don't think I describe it very well sometimes. It's hard to explain all of that. There's a lot of context there. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I had the last video I did on the preterism stuff, where I said it was called Preterism on Its Heels. I got a few responses from that from some people I know that were like, that I had to deal with this week. I had to, help them understand what I was talking about, right? And I just felt like maybe I'm not explaining this very good. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not explaining it very good. I don't know. So anyway, I just thought I'd say that. But that's where we were last week in Mark chapter 13. Oh, thank you, Black Sheep, for that. I appreciate that. You do like my take on the matter. Thank you. I appreciate it. I work really hard on the things that I have studied. I work really hard. All right. So then after this, after Christ gives the disciples this information about what is coming for them, then we're now in chapter 14. So Mark 14, verse 1, after 2 days was the feast of Passover and the unleavened bread. And the chief priests and scribes thought how they might take him by craft and put him to death. So at this point, the chief priests and scribes, they're not even mincing words. They just want to kill Jesus. They want to get rid of him. Verse 2, but they said, not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar of the people. So realize this is Passover. And again, I've done some work and showed you guys before about how Passover connects to the Passover lamb, which connects to Christ. It's pretty obvious from the original Passover that that's what God was showing the Israelites. He was showing them the Redeemer. But then the fact that the actual Redeemer is going to be killed in the middle of Passover week, well, at the end of Passover week, is significant to say the least. So let's just acknowledge that. So they said they didn't want to kill him on the feast day because they were afraid it would agitate the people and there would be an uproar and all this stuff. So being in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment and spikenard, very precious, and she broke the box and poured it on his head, meaning Christ's head. And there were some that had indignation within themselves, saying, why was this waste of the ointment made? For it might have been sold for more than 300 pence and given to the poor. So they murmured against her. And Jesus said, leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has wrought a good work on me. For you have the poor with you always, and whensoever you will, you may do good to them, but me you do not have always. That statement by Christ to me is a little tongue-in-cheek. It's almost like he's jabbing them, right? Because he says, at first you might think he's saying, well, you've always got the poor. Don't mind the poor. Just focus on me. That's not really what he's doing. Listen to what he says. He says, you always have poor. And whenever you want to, you can do something for the poor. But you won't have me always. So he's really jabbing them, saying, well, if you were so concerned about the poor, how come you haven't already done something for them? Do you see that? I think that's what I see here. I think tongue-in-cheek, Christ is kind of jabbing at them, saying, you're giving lip service to the poor, but you yourselves probably don't support the poor the way you're talking about. So don't start. He's like, don't start with me. I think Jesus had a sense of humor. I think he did. Verse 8, she has done what she could. She is come aforehand to anoint my body to the burying. So this is an interesting statement. Christ says she's anointing me for burial. She is doing what she can because she's anointing me for burial. That does beg a question or two for me. That begs the question, was Christ telling others that he was going to be killed? Did she know that he was going to die? Or was this just something that maybe guided by the Holy Spirit she just did out of love or adoration for Christ, but not really knowing that he was truly going to die? Or had Christ been telling them? That's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that, but it does make me wonder if Christ was openly telling people that were following, if he was openly telling them that he was actually going to die. I know he was telling the disciples, that's obvious, but I'm not sure about everybody else. So this is interesting. In verse 9, he says, verily I say to you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached through the whole world, this also that she has done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. So he's saying this act she's doing, it will live on, and people will speak of it as the gospel is preached. Verse 10, Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray him to them. And when they heard it, they were glad, and they promised to give him money. And he sought how he might conveniently betray Christ. And the first day of unleavened bread, when they killed the Passover, the disciples said to him, Where wilt thou that we go and prepare that thou may eat the Passover? So the disciples just asking Christ, where do you want us to have our Passover meal? And he sent forth 2 of his disciples and said, Go to the city, and there you will meet a man bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him. And wherever he shall go in, say to the good man of the house, The master says, Where is the guest chamber, where I shall eat the Passover with my disciples? And he will show you a large upper room furnished and prepared. There make ready for us. Now, this is interesting, just in the sense that just as when they came into the city and Christ told them to go ask this random person about the donkey that he was going to ride in on, or the colt or foal, it's the same thing. It's like these little annoyances of preparation and things are things God has already taken care of. So all Christ has to do is tell them, go talk to this person. It's already set. It's already going to happen. And so they just go to the house. They ask the man, where's the guest chamber for the Passover? And the man shows them the upper room. It's pretty amazing how this all works out. It's interesting, too, that I think that it's included in the scriptures, or that it happened at all. It's interesting to me that happened at all. What's the significance of that? They could have just found a room somewhere, right? I mean, and it doesn't, at some level, you wonder, why is it so significant? But obviously, God had all of these things prepared ahead of time, so that it just all fell into place when it was supposed to. It's very interesting, very amazing. Maybe we don't give God enough credit for what he did during this time period. So in verse 16, the disciples went forth, and they came into the city, and found as he had said to them, and they made ready the Passover. And in the evening he came with the 12, and they sat and did eat. Jesus said to you, Verily I say to you, one of you which eats with me shall betray me. And they began to be sorrowful, and said to him one by one, Is it I? And another said, Is it I? So that's amazing. So they're going around the table after Christ has said this. Each one of the disciples is concerned for themselves, and they look at Christ, and each one starts saying, Christ, is it I? Pointing to themselves or something. You can kind of imagine how that went. And as he answered and said to them, It is one of the 12 that dips with me in the dish. So interesting, just very interesting. So I guess at this point, Christ doesn't immediately identify Judas. So it is interesting. If they're going around and starting to say, Is it I? Is it I? Then Judas is over there probably hiding in the corner. He's already made deals with the chief priests. In verse 21, he says, The Son of Man indeed goes as is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. Good were it be for that man if he had never been born. And as they did eat, Jesus took the bread and blessed it and brake it and gave to them and said, Take, eat, this is my body. Something that just dawned on me. I don't know, have y'all ever thought of this? The disciples were 12, right? There were 12 disciples. And I've always thought, well, that seems like it's a relationship to the 12 tribes of Israel. And what happens? One of the 12 betrays Christ, and essentially in the end is replaced, right? Who's the disciple that is the replacement for Judas? Is it? I can't remember. Let me look this up real quick. Which disciple replaces Judas? Matthias replaced Judas as a disciple after he betrayed Jesus. So the thing that makes me wonder, the 12 tribes, Ephraim, like the tribe of Ephraim was not an original tribe, right? So there's the question of why in the later books of the Bible and in Revelation, the tribe of Dan is not mentioned. And the tribe of, apparently based on the search I just did, Ephraim is missing also. And Joseph and Manasseh are listed as separate tribes instead in some passages. I don't know. It's just interesting. Just for some reason, I just thought of that. There seems to be possible connection there. Something that makes sense. Something that might have been a precursor of what has happened now with Judas. Perhaps it's the tribes. It was the same story where one goes rogue or something like that. I don't know. It's just an interesting thought that I had. So don't take that as like any kind of gospel rule or anything, but it just seems like it could be represented, somehow that way. That the 12 tribes definitely a representation of the 12 disciples and even of the rebellion of Judas. Or the deceit of Judas. That's very interesting. In verse 22, it says, as they did eat, Jesus took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave to them and said to them, take, eat, this is my body. And he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank of it. He said to them, this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many. And I have to say thank you, Flat Bob, so much for your membership gift there. I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much. In verse 25, he says, verily I say to you, I will drink no more of the fruit of the vine until the day I drink it in the new kingdom of God. Now, I do wonder the significance of that. I wish I kind of had more of an idea of why this might be significant, but Christ says at the Passover, he's not going to drink wine. He's not going to drink the fruit of the vine until he drinks it in the kingdom of God. So with his Father in heaven, really. So that's interesting. And I don't know exactly what the significance would be of that. But it gives me pause. It makes me think, makes me wonder. In 26, when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, all ye shall be offended because of me this night. For it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I am risen, I will go before you into Galilee. So Jesus tells them what he's going to do after he's risen. It's amazing. I mean, it's really amazing. I hope they were listening. I hope they were listening because it seems like he catches them by surprise after the resurrection, doesn't it? It seems like they're surprised when they see him. They don't recognize him. They're not expecting him. So he's telling them all this stuff, but they just kind of like, I don't know. They're thick-headed. I think these disciples are a little thick-headed. Verse 29, Peter said to him, although all will be offended, I will not. So Peter, hearing Christ say that when the shepherd is struck down, the sheep will scatter, he says, I'm not going to scatter, Lord. I'm going to stick with you. And Jesus says to him, verily I say to you, this day, even this night, before the cock crows twice, you will deny me thrice. But Peter got upset by this. He said, if I will die with you, I will not deny you in any way. And likewise, they all said this. All the disciples chimed in. They're like, yeah, we won't deny you. No way. But we know he did in the end. Verse 32, they came to a place named Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, sit ye here while I shall pray. And he takes with him Peter and James and John, and began to be sore amazed and very heavy, and said to them, my soul is exceeding sorrowful unto death. Tarry here and watch. This is interesting, and we just have to realize that Jesus was sad about what was going to happen. And I can understand that. Even if you are divine, you are theos, the logos tauteu. and you are the Son of God. And so you have all that knowledge and understanding, even from your Father in heaven. You know exactly what's going to happen. You know exactly why it has to happen. But probably, I would guess, just as Christ, when he's on the cross, is going to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I think that in that way, it's really probably more about the people to Christ than it is about he's going to suffer. Of course, the suffering is going to be bad. The death, the pain's not good, but we know what happens, and he knows what's going to happen. And it says his soul is sorrowful to death. And it's also about, this is about his people. This is about the Israelites, the Jews, who are not accepting the Redeemer that he is. They're not accepting God's Redeemer. And so Christ, I think in this moment, may be more upset actually about the fact that Israel has not turned to God the way that God wanted them to. That may just be me reading in here a little bit, but I'm trying to understand, put myself in that place of why Christ would be exceeding sorrowful unto death. Verse 35, he went forward a little and fell on the ground and prayed that, if it was possible, that the hour might pass from him. And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible to you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt. This is a lot of people, and I think I do too. I use this as a bit of a model for my prayers to the Father, because this is Christ praying to the Father. When there's bad things coming in our lives or happening in our lives, we can pray, please take this away. Please just make it stop. But we do have to acknowledge, even in our prayers, that it's not about what we want, but it's about what he wants. And that's really hard. It's not easy. So I think that we correctly take this as one of the pieces of a model prayer, if you will. And I think that's correct. Verse 37, and Christ came then after praying, and he found all the disciples sleeping. And he said to Peter and Simon, do you sleep? Could you not watch 1 hour? Could you not stay awake 1 hour while I went to pray? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit is truly ready, but the flesh is weak. So I think, maybe he does say this to Peter. I think maybe he's trying to show Peter, you are not vigilant at a time where you should be vigilant. And this could be said to us in our lives in many situations probably too. Sometimes I think we are not focused on or alerted by the things in our lives that we really need to be alerted by. The things we need to be aware of and vigilant about sometimes are the things we are the least vigilant about. And in this time when, literally the history of the world was coming to a point, a pivot point with Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. And Peter knows, just because of what Christ just said, he's going to be under temptation to deny Christ once Christ is struck down, once he dies. And Christ is literally saying, I think, to Peter in this moment, look, you could have been praying to resist temptation in this time period while you're waiting for me. You could have been getting ready for what's coming, but you didn't. Your flesh is weak. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. They're instead indulging themselves in sleep when the hour actually asks for a little more from them, right? Verse 39, and Christ went away again and prayed and spake the same words to God. And when he returned again, he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy, and neither wist they what to answer him. So he asked them why they're sleeping. They didn't know what to say. They were kind of out of it. And he did this whole routine the third time. He went and prayed some more, came back, and he said to them, sleep on now and take your rest. It is enough. The hour is come. Behold, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. So we're literally talking about the last few hours before Christ was taken prisoner, okay? And that's why Christ was on them, why aren't you vigilant? Why aren't you awake? Why aren't you praying? So he says in verse 42, he says, "Rise up, let's go. Lo, he that betrays me is at hand." And immediately while he spake came Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude of swords and staves from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. And he that betrayed him had given them a token, saying, "Whomsoever I kiss, the same is he. Take him and lead him away safely." And as soon as he had come, he goes straightway to Christ and said, "Master, Master," and kissed him. And they laid their hands on him and took him. And one of them that stood by drew a sword and smote the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus answered and said to them, "Are you come out as against a thief with swords and staves to take me? I was daily with you in the temple teaching, and you took me not. But the scriptures must be fulfilled." So Christ saying in verse 49, look, you're fulfilling scriptures because I've been with you in the temple teaching against you, chief priests and scribes. For months I've been in the temples and you've seen me and all this stuff. And you didn't do anything then, but now the scriptures must be fulfilled. And they all then, in verse 50, forsook him and fled. And there followed him a certain young man having a linen cloth cast about his body, and the young men laid hold on him. And he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. Wow, this is interesting. What is this? I don't even know if I know about this. It sounds like when Jesus said this thing, it sounds like many of the people there fled. And I'm trying to parse this. I don't think it's the disciples, but it could have been some of the disciples fled when Jesus says to them, look, I was with you all this time, but the scriptures now have to be fulfilled. And he did say that, of course, when, was it Peter, the one that cut off the ear of the servant? It's not mentioned in Mark here, but so when he cuts off the ear of this servant of the high priest, Jesus, I think, maybe talking to the disciples. It's interesting. I don't know. It's a little hard to parse this little section here. It is. It's a little hard to parse. But it does sound like after he says this thing about being with them and now the scriptures will be fulfilled, that a lot of people fled the scene right there. But it says there followed him again. I'm trying to understand these two verses, 51 and 52. There followed him a certain young man having a linen cloth cast about his naked body. And the young men laid hold on him, and he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. And they led Jesus away to the high priest, and with him were assembled all the chief priests and elders and scribes. So I don't fully understand that little exchange right there. I don't really fully understand that. Perhaps it's that they put the linen cloth. I can't totally get it. I can't totally get it. But regardless, it ended up that Jesus is led away by the high priests and these men to the priests, the elders, and the scribes. And it says in verse 54 that Peter followed him afar off. Like from a very long distance, Peter followed to see where they were going, even to the palace of the high priest. And Peter sat with the servants and warmed himself at the fire as Jesus was in with the high priest. And the chief priests and the council sought for witness against Christ to put him to death, but they couldn't find any, as we know from the other records with Caiaphas. And there was no charge to really be brought against Jesus. There really wasn't. For many bear false witness against him, but their witnesses did not agree. So they had witnesses that came up in the kangaroo court, and none of the witnesses had testimonies that agreed with one another. So there was conflicts, and it didn't make any sense. So of course the council members couldn't put a charge to Christ. But there were that arose and bore false witness, saying, "We heard him say, I will destroy the temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another made without hands." But again, in verse 59, their witnesses did not agree on these things. And the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, "Answer you nothing? What is it which these witnesses against thee? What are they saying against you? Like, that's the funny thing. The high priest gets up. He can't even understand what they're trying to say that Jesus did. So he asks Jesus, what is it that they are saying you did? That's pretty funny. And so Christ doesn't say anything. In verse 61, he holds his peace and he answers nothing. The high priest again asks him and says, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? Now that's a question he could answer, right? So the first question he asks, what are they witnessing against you for? What's the charge they're bringing? He doesn't have an answer. But when he asks, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? Jesus said, I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. He says this to Caiaphas, right? And then the high priest tears his clothes and says, what need we have of any further witnesses? You've heard the blasphemy. What think ye? And they all condemned him to be guilty of death. Now, of course, Christ saying, you're going to see the Son of Man. You're going to see coming in the clouds on the right hand of power. This is literally saying, I'm going to be in the clouds. I am a deity. I am the Son of my Father in heaven. And I will be sitting at his right hand on the throne. That's what is being said here. The right hand of power is a phrase meaning at the right hand of God or on the throne with God and in the clouds of heaven as a deity. Okay? So the high priest feels this is blasphemy because, of course, it's interesting. I'm trying to parse, think through in my head, what context does the high priest have? He's got the Old Testament and the prophecies from the prophets, right? So he knows about the times in those prophecies when it talks about God coming in judgment in the clouds and that kind of thing happening. And he knows history because there were some countries, some nations that had already been judged like that in the past. And so he tears his clothes thinking this is now blasphemy. What he's saying is blasphemy. He's essentially putting himself right next to God in heaven. And so at that point, they all condemn him to be guilty of death in verse 64. Verse 65, some began to spit on him then and to cover his face and buffet him. I guess that means push him around and or hit him. And they said to him, prophesy. And the servants struck him with the palms of their hands. They're slapping him, right? Slapping him around, pushing him down, making fun of him. Verse 66, and as Peter was beneath in the palace, there came out one of the maids of the high priest. And when she saw Peter warming himself, she looked on him and said, and thou also were with Jesus of Nazareth. But he denied, saying, I know not, neither understand I I don't even understand what you're saying. This is in modern. It's like, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about I don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone, woman. And he goes out into the porch after she approaches him. He kind of runs away. And the cock crew at that moment. And a maid saw him again and began to say to them that stood by, this is one of them. And Peter speaks up, hearing them, and says, no, it's not me. And after a little bit, they that stood by again said to Peter, surely you are one of them, for you are Galilean, and thy speech agrees to it. Meaning they heard his accent, and they're like, you're Galilean. You came from where Christ came from, where Jesus came from. But then Peter begins to curse and swear at them, saying, I know not this man of who you speak. So I can put myself in those shoes. I can do that. And the reason is, when you get scared of something and you kind of react in the moment in indignance and you say something real quick to try to diffuse something. To me, I can see this happening. I can see it happening. And I can understand why Peter did it. It's sad, right? It's sad. But you can understand why he did it. in the moment of weakness that he was having. And again, maybe that goes back to what Christ was telling him. You should have been vigilant. You should have been praying about what's coming. It's going to be hard. You should have been more aware. But instead they were sleeping right up until the time Jesus was taken. So in verse 72, the second time the cock crew, and Peter called to mind the word that Jesus said to him, "Before the cock crow twice, you will deny me thrice." And when he thought about it, he of course wept. That's exactly what I can see that in my head. I can feel it. I can imagine myself in that position. You would react in the moment and then realize how bad it was, right? And he went away and he cried, which shows that his heart was in the right place. He just was like Christ said, the spirit was willing, the flesh was weak, and he wasn't ready. He wasn't aware. He wasn't ready. So anyway, very interesting, very interesting. What are you guys saying? I think I see a couple comments here from y'all. I know y'all are talking a lot, but oh, Real McCoy, my date's wrong. You're right. I'm not doing too hot today. I didn't really I did actually. I can make an excuse. So my excuse is that I made Belgian waffles and sausage for my wife on Mother's Day. So that's my excuse. I wasn't ready on time, but now I changed it. It's May 11th today. It's May 11th. Deborah Hicks, you say Jesus puts himself equal with God the Father. In some regard, just as to me, I'm always cautious to say equal because Jesus is God's son. So there is a difference between them. I can't explain that difference perfectly, but there is a difference. And in just the same way as even a human kingship, a king's prince, like his son, is essentially beside him the most powerful person in the kingdom, right? And so in the same way, Christ claiming to be at the right hand of the Father means he has all the power of the Father, but the Father is still higher than him, okay? And that's explained very clearly also in, I believe it's 1 Corinthians 15, talks about that authority structure between the Father and the Son. So yeah, in general terms, like I was saying, it's kind of like Caiaphas realized Christ was claiming deity beside God in heaven, right? And so, yeah, it was to him then it was a big deal, right? So. All right, just looking through your comments here, trying to see if there's anything else. Red Raven, you say as you read this, you can't remove from your mind the images of the movie Passion of the Christ. Yeah. I don't think that I've ever watched that movie all the way through. I've watched small portions, like clips of it. I know it's powerful. I think I haven't watched it partially because I'm a little worried of my reaction. Not that I would react, sadness, that reaction, the sadness of it. I don't know that, yeah, I've just always avoided it for some reason. I don't know why. It makes me sad to think about what I know is in the movie, so I just don't know. I probably would have a rough time with it. Yeah, you guys are saying it's tough. It's a tough watch. Yeah, it is. All right. Let's do this then. Let's start on some of our topics. We've got a few to go through. And I didn't put my title on for Mark 14. I'm just not with it today. I don't know what's wrong with me. All right. Kelsey, you mentioned this. Let's go ahead and do this one. Let's see, how will we word this? What does it mean, the evangelical viewpoint of prophecy, that Trump seems to be turning his back on Israel, trying to know how to speak or converse with these friends? Evangelicals see or feel that Trump, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know how to say this, but okay, so I'll put it this way. Evangelicals feeling that Trump turning on Israel is prophetic. Is that what we're talking about? I'm not going to go too long on this. I know everybody's got different opinions on what's going on. But I'll mention it. It's kind of my thoughts on the whole thing right now. I think it's notable, of course, that for the first time in all my time knowing anything or following any political international dealings, for the first time in my life, I have now seen America kind of giving the cold shoulder to Israel a little bit. That's the first time I remember that happening. It may have happened in other times, but it's pretty significant. And I do think that we need to be careful. It's early. Like this is just brand new, like just in the past week, and time matters. Things will change. Things do change. So I think we got to be careful about making determinations, saying things like Trump has now rejected Israel. I think that's, or the U.S. has rejected Israel. I think we got to be a little careful about that. Like, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day. Trump has also got a way of posturing that makes things happen, like that causes things to happen. Is this more posturing that he's trying to make a play and change something about what's going on over in the Middle East? I don't know. I would assume it is in some way. But there's just a lot of things happening really fast. I know that from what I'm hearing too, a lot of, I think something happened with AIPAC where now AIPAC is being barred from certain, I don't know. I can't remember how it came out, but AIPAC is getting kind of hindered in a lot of ways too. And so, we can be hopeful, right? To me, this is all good news. As far as America is concerned, we need to get divorced from these other countries, including Israel. We need to get divorced from this meddling we do in all these other countries. So I'm all for anything that makes that happen, and anything that also brings peace. That's the other thing that we seem to be seeing, that seems to be part of the plan that's happening as far as the current administration, is that they want peace over there. That seems to be what we're headed towards, or at least what the intention is. So all I can say is that I have to just wait and see, because I don't know. We have to realize we don't know jack crap about what is in those people's brains, and that includes Trump and the leaders of these other countries. We don't know what's in their brains. We don't have the background they do. And so all we can really do is wait and see what outcomes happen because of the leaders that are in power right now. So I try not to get too swept up in it, because it can bring a lot of emotions and a lot of sadness or anger or all this stuff. But the reality is things are changing so fast right now that if you don't like what's happening right now, just wait a month and then check in with me. Okay? It's just wait a month. I'm just saying it's moving so quick that I don't have a determination. I don't even think it's helpful to make a determination. Whatever these people in power want to do, and I mean all of them, Trump included and everybody else, this thing is going to roll forward and it's just going to happen. And you're not going to stop it and I'm not going to stop it. I mean, we can speak out on things, but I think in general, people are speaking out. And so the will of the people right now in America, particularly, and I think around the world in some sense, is being made known, is known by all these people. So they're either they're gonna fight against the people or they're gonna fight with the people. So we just have to wait, give it some time to see how it all falls out. But we can't know right now. We can't even know the plan. We don't even know what, like, for instance, the administration's plan is right now. It's hard to tell. We know what they're saying, and nobody believes what they're saying. I mean, not nobody, but so many people don't want to believe what any of the politicians say right now. There's such angst among Americans, particularly, and of course I'm speaking because I'm an American of America. There's so much angst and so much distrust that there's no way that anyone can make you feel better about what's happening other than just some time and see what happens. Okay, that's all we can do. There's no other thing. And, you know, what you need to be doing, though, is you need to celebrate the good things and you need to talk about that. For instance, when our FBI makes a bust on a huge pedophile ring like it just did, huge, massive, hundreds of people arrested, put in jail for trafficking children, you need to celebrate that. That's a good thing, okay? If we can somehow get out of the conflicts in the Middle East and bring our boys home from war, then I'm going to celebrate that, okay? I'm going to celebrate the good things that happen. And I'm not going to allow myself to get swept up into the milieu of online speculative nonsense that's out there. Because people, you got to realize nobody's got any information except the people that have the information, okay? So I just say give it some time. Let's see what happens. That's what I say. All right. Let's see here. Okay, let's go on to the next topic, I think. This is from Mr. Frag, who is from Australia, so probably not watching right now, but I hope he'll catch this back. And he wanted me to go into the prophecy in 2nd Esdras chapter 13. So I want to do that. I don't particularly remember. I've read Esdras maybe once or twice, okay? So I haven't read Esdras a bunch of times like I have some of these other writings. So let's just take a little time and we'll go to 2nd Esdras. Sorry about that. Go to 2nd Esdras. And, let's go back to the front. 2nd Esdras, right there, chapter 13. And let's see, let's read a little bit. It came to pass after 7 days, I dreamed a dream by night. Lo, there was a wind from the sea, it moved all the waves. Behold, a man that waxed strong with thousands of heaven. And when he turned his countenance to look, all the things trembled that were seen under him. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, they all they burned that heard his voice, like the earth fails when it feels fire. Interesting. And after this I beheld, lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea. Okay, I guess this man was from the sea. Okay. Verse 6, but I beheld, lo, he had graved himself a great mountain and flew upon it. I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not. Okay, interesting. Okay, so it sounds kind of like this is a great mountain, this person from the sea with the multitude from heaven, flew up to the top of this mountain, but this Esdras couldn't perceive where the top of the mountain was. It was either too high or in a different place, perhaps a spiritual place, okay? And after this I beheld, lo, they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet durst to fight. So they were afraid, but they still fought against this man on the mountain. And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war. But only I saw that he sent out of his mouth that had been a blast of fire, out of his lips a flaming breath, out of his tongue he cast sparks and tempests. They were all mixed together, the blast of fire, flaming breath, the great tempest. They fell with violence upon the multitude that was prepared to fight, and burned them up every one, so that upon a sudden innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, only dust and a smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. And afterward I saw the man come down from the mountain, and call to him another peaceable multitude. And there came much people to him. Some were glad, some were sorry, some were bound, some brought them that were offered. Then I was sick with great fear, and I awaked, and I said, You have shown your servant these wonders from the beginning, and you have counted me worthy that you should receive my prayer. Show me now the interpretation of this dream. You know, that's the good part about Esdras, is that often these visions and prophecies, so to speak, the interpretation is shown in the passage. So let's then now read through the interpretation part of this. For he says, I conceive in my understanding, woe to them that will be left in those days, and much more woe to them that are not left behind. For they that were not left were in heaviness. Now understand I the things that are laid up in the latter days, which shall happen to them, those that are left behind. Therefore are they come into great perils and necessities, like as these dreams declare. For it is easier for him that is in danger to come to these things, than to pass away as a cloud out of the world, and not to see these things that happen in the last days. And he answered to me and said, The interpretation of the vision I will show you. Okay, now this is the angel interpreting the vision. So those things he just said were his thoughts. So now we're going to hear the angel tell us. Whereof you have spoken of them that are, quote, left behind, this is the interpretation. He that will endure in the peril that the time hath kept himself. They that be fallen into danger are such as have works and faith toward the Almighty. Know this, therefore, that they which be left behind are more blessed than they that be dead. So what he's really saying there, just so you're kind of tracking with this, he's saying it's going to be better for the ones that can make it through these trials in this time they're talking about, okay? It's better for the ones that can make it through than those that die during this period. Now, why he's saying that at this point, I still don't know. So this is the meaning of the vision. Whereas you saw a man coming up out of the midst of the sea, this same is he whom God the highest has kept a great season, which by his own self shall deliver his creature. He shall order them that are left behind. So I would say, based on this statement by the angel and the, what it says up there, it says in the beginning, it says, this man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven. So that to me sounds like Christ. The thousands of heaven are the angels. And so that's what it feels like to me. And so back here in verse 26. The same is he by whom God the highest has kept a great season, which by his own self shall deliver his creature. And he shall order them that are left behind. Whereas you saw that out of his mouth there came a blast of wind and fire and storm, he held neither sword nor any instrument of war, but the rushing in of him destroyed the whole multitude that came to subdue him. This is the interpretation. Behold, the days come when the Most High will begin to deliver them that are upon the earth. And he shall come to the astonishment of those that dwell on the earth. And one shall undertake the fight against another, one city against another, a place against another, a people against another, one realm against another. And the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, that the signs will happen, which I showed you before. And then shall my Son be declared, whom you saw as a man ascending. Okay, Jesus Christ declared, who you saw as a man ascending. Okay, ascending to the top of the mountain. Well, that's in heaven. That's Zion in heaven. So Christ ascends to Zion, where God's throne is, and takes the throne beside God. Okay, so that all makes sense with the resurrection and the ascension of Christ. Verse 33, when all the people hear his voice, every man will in their own land leave the battle they have against one another. And an innumerable multitude will be gathered together, as you saw them, willing to come and to overcome him by fighting. But he shall stand on top of Mount Zion, and Zion shall come and shall be shown to all men, prepared and builded, like as thou saw the hill graven without hands. This is my son, and this my son shall rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations. This is what I thought actually earlier when we were reading this. This is about Christ warring against the nations. Do you see that? It's just like all the prophecies in the Old Testament. This is Christ warring against the nations. My son will rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations, for their wicked life are fallen into the tempest, and shall lay before them their evil thoughts and the torments wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which are like unto a flame. And he shall destroy them without labor, by the law which is like unto me. And whereas you saw that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanasar the king of Assyria led away captive, carried them over the waters. So came they into another land. They took his counsel among themselves. They would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that there they may keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river, for the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they passed over. Okay, so they passed over the Euphrates. God held back. Okay, interesting. So this is interesting information. It's kind of supplemental to the vision. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely 1.5 years. The region is called Arsareth. They dwelt there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come, the highest shall stay the springs of the stream again. They may go forth. Therefore sawest thou the multitude with peace. But those that be left behind of thy people are they that are found within my borders. Now when he destroys the multitude of the nations gathered together, he will defend his people that remained. And then shall he show them great wonders. Then said I, O Lord that bearest rule, show me this. Wherefore have I seen the man coming up from the midst of the sea? So I think this is going to move on in a second there. I'm trying to just kind of parse this in my brain. There was a lot said there about the 10 tribes carried away prisoners out of their own land, the time of Hosea. Is that Hosea? I don't think it's the prophet Hosea. It's Hosea the king, whom Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive. Okay. Salmanasar. Let me look that up real quick. Ooh. Okay, Salmanasar not appearing in the scripture. Let's see if I can find it somewhere else. Just Esdras in the book of Jubilees, but that's not Salmanasar. Yeah, I don't find much else about that at this moment, so let's just kind of pass by that. So then Ezra asks him about the man coming up from the sea. He said, like as you can neither seek out nor know the things that are in the deep of the sea, even so no man upon earth can see my Son, or those that are with him, but in the daytime, meaning in the time of the day. Okay, so when he is to come, then man will see him. Of course, Ezra would have been getting this prophecy if this is legitimate, right? Second Esdras, if this is legitimate, Ezra would have gotten this prophecy 400 and so years before Christ, okay? He says, "This is the interpretation of the dream which you saw, whereby thou only art here enlightened. For thou hast forsaken thine own way and applied thy diligence unto my law and sought it. Thy life hast thou ordered in wisdom, and hast called understanding thy mother. Therefore have I showed you the treasures of the highest. After other 3 days I will speak other things to you." So then it's over. That's the end. That's the end. No more of the vision here. So I don't know. This is a little tough, but it feels to me like this has to do with, and realize that, where did it say it? It said, right, listen to this. So in the vision, he says, "The days will come, the Most High will begin to deliver them on the earth," meaning, just think of the time frame. This is 450 years before Christ. Who rules the world? Babylon. And then Greece and Persia are huge kingdoms that come up after that. Remember, think Alexander the Great and all those wars and things that happened. What he's saying to Ezra in verse 31, "One shall undertake to fight against another, city against another, a place against another, peoples against another, a realm against another." Over the next few hundred years, there was going to be all these wars between these huge, huge nations. Persia, Greece, Babylon, Rome. The time will be when these things will come to pass, and then will my Son be declared. Okay, then Christ comes, because some of those things have already happened. Think about Daniel's statue with the gold, silver, brass, and iron. Okay, those were the kingdoms that were going to be in place and coming before Christ appeared on the scene. This is the same type of thing. "Then will my Son be declared, whom you saw as a man ascending." Okay, he saw in the vision the man that came out of the sea was ascending this mountain into a high place in a realm he didn't know of, right? He didn't understand. That's Christ. He ascends to heaven after his resurrection. And then when all people hear his voice, every man in their own land will leave the battle they have against one another. But an innumerable multitude, in verse 34, will gather together against Christ. Now, we have to realize that we're already talking about centuries of time. So you got to be careful not to get into a mindset of, well, what happened on this day and what happened this year and that next year. This is centuries of time. So what we see here is there were a number of pagan groups, specifically Rome and some other pagan nations after the time of Christ that waged war against Christians, against Christ, his body, right? So to me, this is what is being talked about here. But Christ will stand upon Mount Zion. He stays in heaven during the time after his resurrection and ascension. He's in heaven. So he's in Zion. And it says, Zion will come and be shown to all men, prepared and builded like you saw the hill. And my Son will rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations. Okay? And you can just think of time and space and many peoples. The gospel had spread all over the Middle East, into Saudi Arabia, into Africa. The gospel had spread into North Europe. Everywhere, really, the gospel was going everywhere, even in Rome. But yet there were nations like Rome, the Huns that invaded from the east. Some of them were very pagan, and Rome actually partnered with some of those nations to defeat some of the Christian nations. Just think of all of that when you're reading this, because I believe that's what is being talked about here. This vision is spanning centuries of time, and it is talking about what's going to happen when Christ ascends to Zion and then starts waging war against these nations that wage war against him. And that is what I feel is being talked about here. I think too, like in verse 40, when it says the 10 tribes, I don't think you want to get hung up on Israel's tribes here. The word tribes, by the way, I don't know of 2nd Esdras specifically. I don't have an untranslated version of it. I don't have the original language of it. But the word tribes is also, in general sense, in the Bible, it's the same word for tribe and nation and peoples. It's all the same word. So you got to be careful, assuming this is the 10 tribes perhaps of Israel that are displaced. I don't think that's true. I think this might just be different peoples, people groups. But I mean, the reference here seems to be related to ancient Israel, right? He's telling a story that relates to what he's talking about in the vision. This story from verse 40 through, where does it go to? It goes to verse 46. Yeah, I think verses 40 through 46 is the old story that he's saying represented the new one, in the vision that's like representative of it. So he's using it as a comparison, but it's not equivalent, So you shouldn't be thinking the 12 tribes of Israel when you're thinking of this vision that Esdras gets, It's just not there. Does that help? Does that help you see kind of like what it is? And of course, Mr. Frag is not going to be on with us probably right now, so I'm sure he'll catch up later and see this, but that, by the way, that little read through and parsing I just did was not necessarily easy. I really had my brain in gear on that one. Sometimes it all muddles together when you're reading it, and you got to really think hard about it. The overall, I will say that the prophecies that I've read in Esdras, to me, were some of the tougher to really parse. But again, you got to put yourself in the mindset of the person who's being given the prophecy, and in the time period, and all the context of being a Jew, having just come back into Jerusalem. Ezra was part of the Nehemiah and all of them coming back to Jerusalem to rebuild, and then getting prophecies from God about when the Redeemer comes and the nations and the battles and all this stuff. That's really, but there's a lot of Esdras prophecies also that are very Jewish specific, but those are usually couched in a time frame that's a little closer to Esdras' time, right? Ezra's time. So anyway, I think I'm babbling now, but hopefully all that makes some sense. Hopefully. Flat Bob, are you you're not talking to me, it doesn't look like. I think you're talking with somebody else there about. Yeah, I don't think you're talking to me specifically. Okay, good deal. Well, that was a fun one. I'm glad Mr. Frag brought that up, and I hope it helps. Some of those prophecies are not that easy. Okay, so what we're going to do now is a little unorthodox, but Adam Unchained. So Adam has been with us for a while. And Adam has his own channel too. I will mention that. And what he asked of me is that I take his timeline he made and kind of review it. I mean, I'll do this, Adam. I don't want to, if I have a criticism, I'll say it, but I don't know. I haven't really looked at this very close yet. So you've asked that I just take a look at your timeline and give you my thoughts. So I'll do that. Let's see here. Let me see. I got to make it a little bigger, I think, so that I can see everything and everybody else can see everything. Let's see here. So it looks like you start the timeline with Babylon. You have Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel's visions of the four kingdoms. You got Daniel's 70 weeks mapped out, which is 490 years. And yeah, I would agree with that. You've got it coming straight up to Jesus being crucified. I think that's perfect. And, you started it from Artaxerxes' decree in 457 or so. So yeah, that all looks right to me. You've got marked within that time period, you've got Medo-Persia, and then Greece, and then Rome. Of course, that's the Daniel prophecy vision of the statue that Nebuchadnezzar got, right? And the kingdoms that would be coming up until the time of Christ. So I think you've got that mapped out perfectly. You mentioned Jesus crucified. I like how you put 30 AD, because I think that's the right year, and not 33, but I don't know for sure. I think you mentioned 33 AD here, and whether the years all add up perfectly, I think is something that I kind of like. I haven't found personally the value in trying to map years out to like the nth degree. That to me has not been my focus. The prophecies overall are so accurate that I don't feel like I need to go that level, but I'm just saying that either way, that's neither here nor there. But I do believe Jesus was crucified in 30 AD. That's just my own opinion based on when Passover fell that year and the week and the way things happened. Seems to me to be right. And that also gives a nice 40-year waiting period until 70 AD, which you've mapped here too. That you put the destruction of the temple here, 70 AD. I think that is good, obviously. So to me, the 30 works out well with the 70. It's the 40 years. It's a waiting period, just like the waiting period in the Old Testament, just like that. The wilderness, the time of Israel in the wilderness. Okay, and then you've got saints raised. You've got saints raised there. So that to me is a little bit of a question mark. I'm not saying it's wrong per se, but I've waffled on this. Okay, I've waffled on this a little bit, and it's because of my understanding of the final judgment and what is going to happen there, and trying to really parse out the different verses that talk about this. It does seem like, I will just say, for instance, the Gospel of Nicodemus, that narrative says that it sounds like some of the patriarchs and the righteous Jews that were in Hades at the time Christ went down there were taken with him to the garden at that time, to paradise. Just as he says to the thief on the cross, "You will be with me today in paradise." It seems like there were some that were taken out of Hades at that time. But I will just say that to me has been a bit of a stumbling block, just figuring out all the ins and outs of that. So I like how you've represented it here, but I just don't have a clear picture of it myself. So I'm still struggle with that a little bit. Who was actually, were any raised? Who was raised at the time when Christ came out of Hades? Who was that? Okay, and how do we identify that group? To me, that's been difficult. Okay. All right, so you mentioned here, what else do you mention? The judgment of Rome. I like how you have that. Did occur during the time period. You mentioned the first resurrection here, blessed and holy priests. So the 1,000 years here as well, where Satan is bound, I would, agree with that occurred. But I don't know, some of the things here are a little obscure that you're mentioning. So some of the things like the blessed and holy priests, you mentioned worshipers reign with Christ. I agree with that. People reigned with Christ in heaven, but I don't believe that was on earth, and I don't know which stand you have. So I'll just point that out as a possible, difference between my view and yours. I don't know for sure. Matthew, you say, Adam, you say Matt 25 or 27:52. You are assuming our Old Testament saints. Yeah, just let me take it down for my notes, and then I'll kind of look into some of this stuff later too, because this kind of stuff, this is all very fast to go through all this stuff. So I'll do my best here. But you mentioned the 1,000 years, and I would agree that Jesus is reigning in heaven during that 1,000 years. I put that 1,000 years between about 500 or so AD and 1500 AD. That's my own personal kind of opinion on that. It has some evidence behind it, but just so you know, that's where I stand on that. Then you've got the rest of the dead living after the 1,000 years. Yeah. I don't know for sure what to make of those verses either in Revelation chapter 20. That's why I'm saying that to me relates to what I was talking about before, where it's hard to identify, like, did someone come out of the grave with Christ in 30 AD or 30 whatever, 30 AD when he was resurrected? Did someone come out with him, and who was it? And what does it mean that the rest of the dead would not live till after the 1,000 years? And the other question, we should ask ourselves is, does it mean that the rest of the dead literally live immediately after the 1,000 years, or did the rest of the dead come or become resurrected at the final judgment? The question is a little specific, and the texts are unspecific. Do you see where the problems are there? This is, again, getting into like what I was talking about earlier, where I feel like sometimes it's not adequate. I don't have an adequate full explanation for every single thing. I don't. And I don't know if I ever will. It's very hard. There's a lot going on. A lot. You have Satan loose to deceive in the short season. Absolutely. I totally agree there. You've got Gog and Magog encompassing the camp of the saints and the beloved city. I don't see where you're putting that specifically, but you've got it between Satan's loosing and perhaps the fire that comes upon earth. And then after the fire that comes upon earth, it's talked about in many texts. Then you've got the great white throne judgment, the second death for the wicked, which is obviously stated in Revelation 20. And so that all makes sense. And then the new heaven, new earth, 100%. That to me all looks really good. So I guess in general, Adam, I like this timeline a lot. It does match a lot of what I teach and where I stand on things. So I applaud you. I think it's a really nice looking timeline too. So good work on that. It's not always easy to do all that graphic work. But no, it's really good. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think it's good. Yeah, Terry Barnes, what you're saying there, I like. You say the saints were raised to pass judgment on holy council and replace them to reign with Jesus. Okay, I think I see what you're saying. That to me, at least the part about the saints makes sense. Like someone was reigning with Christ. So absolutely someone was raised. We do have, of course, the accounts in the New Testament where it says people did come back to life. People were seen that were raised. And then they were gone again. Some people that came back. So obviously some people were raised. I guess it just for me is hard because I can't pin that down. Like exactly who is that and exactly. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard. It's a little hard for me. Adam, you mentioned the 24 elders. The 24 elders to me, I believe, I did some different studies on the 24 elders. At one point, I wondered if it was like Christians, if there were some saints that were just like, special or more devout, more faithful than others. And so certain Christians were the 24 elders. I think that's actually kind of a mainline Protestant view. I also considered, were the 24 elders possibly the prophets of the Old Testament? Were there 24 of those? I looked, and in 24 is close to the number of prophets, but it's not perfect, okay? And so there's a lot of question marks there. And there are a lot of people in the Old Testament that are mentioned as prophets that we don't have books from. So you end up actually with more than 24 prophets in the Old Testament. So that to me, after I studied it, I thought it worked for a while, but then I decided, no, I really don't think it works. It's not the right number. So here's what I do think. I tend to think that the 24 elders are principalities. They're angel principalities. And I don't think they are dethroned by anybody. Okay, God has given them their position. So look at this. Look at this. I want you to show you this passage. This is a very important passage. If I can get the, come on now. Just give me a new window here. All right. So let me show you that in Revelation chapter 6. No, 7. 7. Yeah, okay. The elders. Okay, so this is it. Revelation 7, verse 11. Now, verse 9, just listen to what happens, okay, in this passage. This is crucial. It's awesome. You'll never see Revelation chapter 7 the same way after this right here. So what happens in 7? I saw 4 angels in the corners of the earth holding the 4 winds, another angel ascending, etc., blah, blah, blah. I heard the number of those that were sealed, okay, the seal of God in their foreheads. How many were there? 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. So this is talking about the Israelites that did stay true to God in faith and accepted the Redeemer. And so that's 144,000. It's all Israel. It talks about them. Then it says, verse 9, behold, a great multitude then, which I beheld, that no man could number, of all nations, all kindreds, all peoples, all tongues. These are not Jews. Okay, these are Gentiles, an innumerable number. They stood before the throne, before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, salvation to our God, which sits on the throne, and unto the Lamb. And all the angels, okay, I got to change my title real quick because we're now doing the 24 elders. I'll change my title. Okay. And all the angels stood round about, and the elders and the 4 beasts, okay? And they fell and worshipped the throne, or before the throne, worshipped God, saying, blessing, glory, and honor, wisdom, thanksgiving forever and ever to the God. Okay, great. One of the elders, listen to this. This is it. This is where you got to understand this, and it's a little difficult, okay? One of the elders answered, saying to me, what are these which are arrayed in white robes, and where did they come from? And I said to him, sir, you know. Okay, so that's interesting. The elder asked, where did these come from? And then I said, sir, you know where they came from. So you got to ask yourself, why would this elder know where these people come from? He said to me, these are they which came out of the great tribulation, have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Okay? Therefore are they before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in his temple. Now this is the innumerable people from all nations, Gentiles, all over the place, that made it through the trials to come, okay, and have washed their robes, made them white in the blood of the Lamb. They are Christians, okay? They lean on the sacrifice of Christ for their salvation. Therefore are they before the throne of God, serve him night and day, and he that sits on the throne shall dwell among them. When does that happen? When does Christ dwell with the saints? Well, that's going to be at the end after the great white throne judgment. That's what is talked about in those texts. They will hunger no more, thirst no more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. For the Lamb which is in the midst shall feed them, etc., etc. And we didn't quite hit the elders thing that I wanted to yet. So hang on one second. That wasn't the chapter that had all of the stuff. Okay, let's see if it's in Revelation 4 where it does mention the elders here. I saw 24 elders sitting clothed in white raiment. They had crowns of gold. Out of the throne, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the first beast, please. The 24 elders fall down and worship, or down before him that was on the throne, and worship him that lives forever and ever. That's God, not Christ. That's God, the Father. And they cast their crowns before the throne, saying, Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive honor, glory, and power, for you've created all things, and for thy pleasure, and were created. They are and were created. So the elders fall down and worship. Now, we're getting there. There's this one passage. It must be in chapter 5 here. Must be in chapter 5. Ah, yes. Okay, let's see. This is it. Okay. So, chapter 5 is when they're trying to figure out who's going to take the scroll that can open the seals of the scroll. Who can do it? And it's Christ. He's the only one that can do it, the Lamb, okay? In the midst of the elders stood a lamb that had been slain, having 7 horns, 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth to all the earth. And he came and took the scroll, or the book, out of the hand of him that was on the throne, out of God the Father's hand. And when he had taken the book, what happens? The 4 beasts and the 24 elders fall down before the Lamb, okay? Having every one of them harps. Now the beasts and the elders, they all have harps, and golden vials full of odor, perfume, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to take the book and open the seals, for you were slain and have redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred, tongue, and people and nation. Now, who is the they that sung the song? Yeah, that should be the elders and the beasts, okay? You have redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred, tongue, people, nation. Has made us unto our God kings and priests. We shall reign on the earth. Okay, this is the passage. This is the one that's so wrong. It's so badly translated. Okay, you're probably wondering, like, how can that be all wrong? Look at the previous verse. Oh gosh. Sorry. So Revelation, let me go back. I'm making this harder than it is. So they sang a new song. Let's go to this in the Greek. That's what we're going to have to do. I can't just do this. And they are singing a song new, saying, Worthy are you to take the scroll. Okay, they're singing to Christ. And to open the seals of it, because you were slain. And you purchased to God by your blood out of every tribe, tongue, and people and nation. He's saying, you are worthy, Christ, because out of every nation you purchased the people. You purchased with your blood the people out of every nation on earth. Every tribe, every nation, every tongue. That's what the Greek is saying. You can't even see that in the English. It's so just convoluted. Then we go to verse 10, the next verse. After having said, they're singing this new song, saying, Christ, you have taken people out of every nation, purchased by your blood. This is what the elders are saying. And you have made them our God. Do you see this? You have made them to the God of us. You have made them our deities. Do you see that? Now, this is the elders saying, you have made them our deity. What were the elders? They were the principalities of the nations. Prior to this, they ruled over humans. Do you see the inversion that's happening here? It's only available to you in the Greek. I'm sorry, the English will never show you this. They are saying, you have made them our rulers, our deities, instead of us being their deities. a kingdom and priesthood, and they will reign upon the earth. In the end time, after the great white throne judgment, they will reign upon the earth. Or over the earth. You could see it as they reign over the earth even while Christ's kingdom is in heaven. But do you see what the elders are saying here? And when I studied the Greek on this, I was like, whoa, these elders have to be something different. They're not just humans. They're not just like Christians. That doesn't make any sense for them to say this. So what they're saying is, and again, we can go back to the English, and it's all convoluted. It says they sang a new song. You were worthy to take the book and open the seals, for you were slain and have redeemed to us by God by blood out of every kindred, tongue, and people. It takes the focus. The English takes the focus off the people that were redeemed, okay? Because that's the focus for the next verse in the Greek. So in the next verse, verse 10, and you have made those people our God, our kings and priests, our gods, essentially, our rulers. And we will reign, or they will reign on the earth. See, it's all convoluted in the English. It's just all convoluted. So that's why in the tool here on Revelation 5:10, I put this alternate reading so you could see that. You have made them, the saints, our gods, a reign and a priesthood, and they will reign upon the earth. Okay? That's what it's saying. So when you realize that, you realize the elders are something different. They are something special. They are the principalities that still sit around the throne of God. Now, there are some old texts that talk about that the nations were divided among 70 principalities. I don't know if that's a legitimate number or if those numbers are just kind of like hyperbole in a way. But regardless, these could be just simply the ones that were still true to God at the time of these prophecies, at the time of Christ. Because some of them did not go astray, as far as I understand it, but some of the, quote, shepherding angels that God put over the peoples, they did go astray, of course. So, anyway. All right, now that I think I've totally confused everybody with that. I tried to explain that, but I think I did it. I hope that is helpful in some regard. I hate bringing things like that to people's attention if you don't ever take it and look at the Greek yourself and start to understand that, then this won't ever make any sense. It won't ever make any sense, and it'll always be a stumbling block for your research if we don't fix that in the English. But anyway. All right, where are we now on our topics and our time? Let's see. We've gone a good long time here today so far. Let's see what else we've got. I've got a few more topics. I think what I'm going to do is pick one and do that as the last topic. So let's do this. I want to do this one from you, Patriot. Because I think it's something that people will kind of be interested in hearing about. You said that Luke 21:9 to you shows a pretty stark contradiction in translation between two versions. So let's take a look at Luke 21:9 together, and just we'll point out the differences and try to make some sense of it. So let's go there and show that and talk a little bit about that. So if we go up to Luke 21:9, oops, not 2:9, 21:9. But you will hear of wars and commotions, not be terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. Okay? So let's go to that in Bible Hub online and see what these versions have to say. So you said ESV, for 21:9, which says, "When you hear of wars and tumults, do not be terrified, for these things must first take place, but the end will not be at once." Yeah, that's a little different. So let's make that a little bigger there. But yeah, so when you hear of wars and tumults, do not be terrified, for these things must first take place, but the end will not be at once. And then let's go and let's see. How do we get over there? Oh, that wasn't it. Oh, I made it really bad for myself. What did I do? Oh, come on. Let's go to the NLT. New Living. Is it New Living Translation? Yeah, New Living. Let's see. Do they have New Living on here? I don't see it. Doggone it. Yeah, here it is. New Living Translation. Luke 21, not 1. 21:9. Okay, sorry guys. And when you hear of wars and insurrections, don't panic. Yes, these things must take place first, but the end won't follow immediately. Yeah. It's different, isn't it? It's a little different. They use the word insurrections here, where before they used the word tumults. And then it says the end won't follow immediately versus, I think it was like by and by. How did it say it? Yeah, the end will not be at once and stuff like that. So I don't know what to really do with that other than go to the Greek. That's the only way I know to find this stuff out. I will say this, the Young's literal translation, YLT version, is usually pretty good on giving a very literal reading of the Greek. So here we say, when you may hear of wars and uprisings, be not terrified, for it behooves these things to happen first, but the end is not immediately. So having seen that revision there, let's look at the Greek. And you can do this because if you just go to this page and kind of read down the English column, you're getting a pretty literal translation of the Greek words, pretty literal. So even not reading Greek, you can kind of do this and at least gives you a different idea of the verse. You can see it says having, this is the wrong verse, 21 verse 9. I'm having some trouble today. Okay. When then you should hear of wars and commotions, you can say, oh, they said commotions here. Why? Well, the good thing is you can click here on the Strong's number and you can see this is the word in Greek, akatastasia, and it means disorder or confusion, instability, tumult. That's why you see different translators translating it differently, because they are all trying to come up with what they think it's most like is the best English word for it in their translation. That's just how it works. You got to realize translators are just people, and they've got issues too. So So the translators have as much trouble as anybody sometimes coming up with the exact right meaning of a word. They're using sometimes helps and guides, or thinking of the root words and what do these root words mean, and then coming up with their own interpretation of that word sometimes. So you just got to, I don't know, the only way I've found to be very confident on the wording and what it means is when I'm really digging into a verse, I'll go to the Greek and I'll just do some of this. I'll click through the words, I'll learn about each of the words, and then I'll come up with, well, I think that either this translation was best or I come up with my own. And I'm like, well, the words seem to say this. But it says wars and commotions, be not terrified, which is toete, which that means to be frightened or terrified or alarmed. So it's a good translation. Don't be afraid. It behooves, or it means these things must take place first, but not immediately. And this word immediately is the Greek eutheos and means exactly what we think it means: immediately or right away, at once. So again, you can do this and kind of look through the words, but he says not immediately is the end. It's not the end at that moment. So that should clear up the different versions for you. And I hope sometimes doing this, I'm showing you guys like how you can see hopefully how the translators came up with this stuff. You can understand a little bit more of that. And again, the translators are human. They have failings. They're not perfect. So anyone that tells you that every English word of the English Bible is 100% God-breathed, that's just not true. That's simply not true. I don't know how to say it any other way. And I'm tired of dancing around that. You can't say that. So if you say that, then you definitely have to come down a specific version. Of course, most people will come down on the King James Version and say that's the version that's 100% inspired in the English. But that's not true. There were English versions before the King James Version. There were Latin versions. There were Greek versions. There were, you name it, Armenian and Coptic versions. There were all sorts of versions. So really the best way is to go to the Greek, to get as close to the Greek as you can, because the Greek really hasn't changed much. And I've verified that in many passages by looking at the ancient Greek manuscripts that we've got from like the 2nd, 3rd century, 4th century. And they match the Greek that we've got almost perfectly, like with very little exception at all. So I feel like the Greek is very trustworthy. The English is a little less trustworthy. And if you're going to read English, you need to read a very literal translation of it. I suggest the New American Standard. That's one I like. I do like that Young's literal translation, but it's a much older translation. So he uses some old English words sometimes because that's what they used when he translated, right? So you just got to be aware. You got to be aware that translation is a translation. And I hope that helps. Hope that helps in clearing that up, Patriot. XP Black Sheep, you asked when was the little season going to end? When is the little season going to end? Because I'm sick of it, right? That's what you were saying. Yeah, I wish I knew. I personally think it's going to be very soon. I personally think it's going to be over in the next decade. But that's my own personal opinion, and I don't ever push that on anybody, and I don't make videos about that because I don't think that that's... I don't think that it's important for me to start telling people when it's all going to come to a close. I don't want to be the Paul Revere of the eschatological world. I definitely don't. But I don't think that we have too long, really. I just don't. That's just my own opinion. And by not long, I mean years. I don't know how many, but years. It's just my thought. Yeah, Flat Bob, you say you can't stand this place. It sucks. It's crazy, you know. There's some things that have happened in the last few years and that are happening now that I just never... Of course, most of us just never would have imagined, right? Never would have imagined. One of the worst, and I'm for some reason I'm thinking of Australia because of, you know, Mr. Frag and his questions, and just thinking about other countries and places. I would have never thought that I would have seen Australian police shooting citizens of Australia with shotguns during the COVID riots. I never would have thought that I would have ever seen that. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine my police force attacking me as a citizen that way. And I cannot for the life of me understand what would have been going through the minds of those police officers as they were shooting their own citizens. I've heard perhaps that in some regard, the police force there could have been hiring foreign agents from like the UN and stuff like that as police officers, so that they weren't actually Australians, because Australians probably wouldn't have shot Australians during that riot. But some of those things I can understand, Flat Bob, why you'd say what you do, that it sucks right now. It sucks in a lot of ways. There's a lot of bad stuff going on. And I hope that changes. There's some good things going on, some good things. So again, to me, that's a matter of time, and we'll just have to see what happens. But yeah, you're right though, Flat Bob, when you say that. You say people don't seem to care about anything other than a screen in front of their face, as long as they have the circus and the peanuts. All I can say is, let's try not to be that way, I guess. As I'm talking to you through the screen, get that screen out of your face. Come on. But, at least we can connect this way, right? Well, thank you guys so much for your time today. I think we'll finish up for the day. And there were a couple I didn't get to. I think, Patriot, you had a second question from your friend Beverly about the long versus short season type thing. And then Stacia, you asked about the Israelites believing the temple was heaven and earth, which I was going to talk about that, Stacia, but I have talked about that before. And I was planning to bring up Josephus's writing to show you what it says about that. Because it wasn't that they believed the temple was heaven and earth. He even said it. He said it represented I think he said I can't remember exactly how he said it, but it represented things in heaven, right? It represented the throne, perhaps, and the Mount Zion in heaven, or the throne room, or whatever. So there was a representation there, right? It was symbolic. And Hebrews explains this very clearly, that everything about the temple was symbolic, and it was patterned after things in heaven. But to then say and apply that to new heaven and earth, perhaps in Revelation chapter 21, is going the opposite direction. Then you're saying, no, heaven and earth represents the temple. But that's not how symbols work. The symbol represents a thing, okay? But the thing doesn't ever represent the symbol, okay? So to switch it around like that, as full preterists do, to make the temple equals the new heaven and new earth, is just simply not founded. There's no grounding for that. And there's no writings or anything that tells us that that's really the case, that the new heaven and new earth was this, symbolic reference, veiled reference to either the temple or the human body as the temple of God or anything like that. So there's no writing anywhere that says that. I mean, it just doesn't. Other than you may find it, if you want to go looking and you want to read the writings of Origen, the church father, you could read his writings. It may say something about that. But because of what I know of Origen and the way he wrote and the things he thought about Scripture, he thought behind every verse of Scripture was a hidden, veiled secret to be found. And so he went looking for secrets and hidden things in every verse of Scripture. And I got so fed up just reading through his writings. I was like, this is nonsense. He's just making up things. So I have no real attachment to Origen's writings whatsoever. But if, to you think you might find something interesting there that helps your case, I would say by all means go read the writings of Origen on things like that and see what he says. But I can't think of any other church writer that has ever said anything about the new heaven and new earth not being an actual remade heaven or remade earth. So, and having nothing to do whatsoever with the law and the prophets or Israel, just didn't. So anyway, looking up for him, you say that Canadian pastors are still being arrested for preaching the gospel in public places. That's crazy. That's crazy. Canada is a mess right now, man. Canada's a mess. Why is Canada such a mess? I mean, they literally would be better off if they did become the state of America. I mean, they would be better off. I'm not saying I want that, or I know that most of them, a lot of them, especially in the cities, don't want that. But it sure would fix a lot of things really quick. It's kind of sad what's going on in Canada right now. And of course, the new prime minister is, I don't know if he's as bad as Trudeau, but seems like he's just as bad. And the immigration, if you want to call it that, I call it migration of Indians into the country, Canada, is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Talk about destroying a country. It's becoming a mess. Yeah, Stacia. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'll quit. I could probably drone on for a while, so I'll stop and I'll cut out. Y'all have a second left on the chat, but thank you so much for joining today and for the time we've had together. I really enjoyed, for instance, going through Adam's material on the timeline, and then the Esdras stuff. That was fun to go to. I haven't dove into that very much, so it was fun to go through that vision and prophecy, and I think we've just done a lot of interesting stuff here. I had fun talking about the 24 elders, even though I think I butchered it a little bit. You guys have a great Mother's Day, and please take care of your mothers on this wonderful day, and have a good one. Goodbye.